So think about this for a moment. What does it really mean for your voice, your vote, to count? Right now in Singapore, there's a pretty significant conversation happening around electoral reform. It's actually taking shape as a petition.
Yeah, a petition that's proposing some, well, potentially fundamental changes to how the whole system works.
Yeah.
How your voice gets heard, essentially.
Okay, let's get into it then. Today we're doing a deep dive into 6 key political reforms. These are being put forward by Dr. Chee Soon Juan and the Singapore Democratic Party, the SDP.
Right. It's part of their Renew, Rebuild, Reignite roadmap, and this petition is the mechanism they're using to push these ideas forward.
And we should mention, our guide for this discussion is largely based on reporting from 2230. They've done a good job breaking down these SDP proposals.
Exactly. So our goal here is to really understand what these reforms are about, the why behind them, and what kind of impact they might have on Singapore's democracy if they were ever implemented.
Right, getting to the heart of it. So first up, the Elections Department, the ELD.
Currently, it sits under the Prime Minister's office, the PMO.
And this is where the first major proposal comes in. The SDP wants to change this structure quite dramatically.
They do. They're calling for an independent elections commission, completely separate.
Okay, an independent body. What's the thinking there?
Well, the core idea, it's about neutrality and building public trust. The argument is that having the body that runs elections report directly to the Prime Minister, well, it could raise questions about impartiality for some.
So independence is meant to safeguard that neutrality.
Precisely. To make sure the process is seen as fair from start to finish. It's about perception as much as practice, perhaps.
And it's not just about making it independent, right? They've also suggested who should be on this commission.
That's right. They're talking about a mix of people, academics, folks from civil society, professionals, not just political appointees.
So bringing in different perspectives from outside the usual political sphere.
Yeah, the idea is to broaden the oversight, make it less concentrated, and hopefully reinforce that sense of fairness and impartiality for everyone.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the next point, which is often debated. Electoral boundaries, the EBRC.
Ah, yes, the Electoral Boundaries Review Committee. It's faced criticism, hasn't it?
Yeah.
About, well, a lack of transparency.
People point to constituencies kind of appearing or disappearing or changing shape, sometimes not long before an election is called, and often without a very detailed public explanation of why.
Exactly. And that why is what the SDP seems to be targeting. They want more transparency.
How so? What are they asking for specifically?
They want the criteria for drawing these boundaries made public, like what rules are they following? And they're also suggesting public consultations. Let people have a say or at least understand their reasoning.
Public consultations on boundary changes. That would be new.
It would. And they also float the idea of appointing independent members to the EBRC itself. Again, trying to distance the process from direct government control.
So both for the ELD and the EBRC, there's this running theme of independence and transparency.
Absolutely. It seems aimed at bolstering the, let's say, the underlying integrity and trustworthiness of the whole electoral machinery, making sure voters and parties feel confident in the process.
Okay. Now let's talk about the types of constituencies. We have GRCs, group representation constituencies, and SMCs, single-member constituencies.
Right. GRCs involve teams of candidates, usually led by a minister, and crucially, must include minority representation. SMCs are just one candidate for one area.
And the SDP's proposal here is quite a big shift, isn't it?
It is. They're advocating for a move entirely to SMCs, get rid of the GRC system altogether.
Why the push for only SMCs?
The main argument usually centers on accountability. A single MP for a single constituency means voters know exactly who to hold responsible for local issues for their performance. It's a clearer line, proponents say.
And the criticism often leveled at GRCs is that, well, maybe less prominent candidates can get elected sort of on the coattails of a popular minister heading the team.
That's the argument, yes.
Okay.
That it can dilute the focus on individual merit or track record. Though defenders of the GRC system always point to its role in ensuring minority representation in Parliament.
Right. That's the key justification for GRCs originally. So it's a trade-off being debated there, direct accountability versus ensuring representation.
Exactly. It's a complex issue with valid points on both sides.
Okay, let's switch gears to the campaign period itself. How long candidates actually have to campaign?
Currently, it's 9 days, officially,
Yeah.
which is pretty short.
Very short, yeah.
Yeah.
And the SDP wants to change that quite substantially.
They do. They're proposing tripling it to 21 days.
21 days, wow. What's the rationale for such a big increase?
It's fairly straightforward, really. More time for voters, more time to, properly look at the candidates, understand the different party platforms, compare them, ask questions.
So deeper engagement, basically. Less of a rush.
Precisely. More time for rallies, debates, for information to sink in. It could allow for more scrutiny.
And perhaps level the playing field a bit, giving opposition parties more time to get their message out against an incumbent.
That's likely part of the thinking, yes. A longer period might give challengers a better shot at reaching voters effectively.
Okay, another timing issue they're raising relates back to those boundary changes we discussed.
The timing of when they're announced.
Right. There have been cases where the new boundaries are revealed, and then Parliament is dissolved very shortly after.
Which can be tough for opposition parties.
Right.
Suddenly you need to figure out where your candidates should stand, how to campaign in potentially new areas, all with very little notice.
Creates logistical hurdles. So what's the SDP's fix for this?
They're proposing a mandatory gap, a 6-month minimum period between the announcement of boundary changes and the dissolution of Parliament.
6 months. That's quite a buffer.
It is. The idea is to give everyone, parties and voters alike, enough time to adjust, prepare, and understand the new electoral map well before polling day. Fairness in preparation, essentially.
Makes sense. Okay, the final political reform they're pushing for concerns the media. Specifically, the Newspaper and Printing Presses Act, the NPPA.
Ah, the NPPA. Yes, this act governs media ownership and licensing in Singapore. It's been around a long time and, critics argue, facilitates significant state influence or control over the mainstream media.
So the SDP wants to review this. What's their goal?
Their stated aim is to open up the media landscape, create more space for independent media outlets to emerge and operate.
And the presumed benefit of that would be?
More diverse viewpoints, ideally.
Yeah.
More balanced coverage, especially during election time. The argument is that a freer, more varied media helps create a better informed public.
Which in turn helps voters make more considered choices.
That's the connection they're making, yes. So those are the 6 core political reforms in the petition. Independence for the ELD, transparency for the EBRC, SMCs only, a longer campaign, a gap for boundary changes, and NPPA review.
A pretty comprehensive package touching on key parts of the electoral system.
Definitely. But it's also worth noting the SDP's efforts aren't just focused on these political structures. They have broader initiatives, too.
Like the Orange Teal Cafe.
Exactly, Dr. Chee's Cafe. It's been restructured into a social enterprise and cooperative OSTEC, they call it.
OSTEC. Okay, what's the significance of that?
Well, it's presented as a model based on different principles, things like fair wages, worker empowerment, even worker ownership opportunities, and a community focus. It ties into their larger idea of a people's economy.
A people's economy, what does that entail?
The idea seems to be about empowering ordinary Singaporeans, not just as workers, but potentially as co-owners or stakeholders in the economy. OSTEC is positioned as a sort of practical example of this vision.
And people can actually join this cooperative.
Apparently so. They've opened up membership to the public for a one-time fee, $100. It suggests they want a broad participation in this model.
Interesting. And beyond the economic side, they're also reaching out to young people.
Yes, there's a clear youth outreach strategy. They're talking about setting up student clubs, publishing a youth-focused book, running digital campaigns.
Trying to engage the next generation.
Definitely. The SDP's youth wing, the Young Democrats, they're actively calling for young Singaporeans to get involved, not just watch from the sidelines, but actually help shape politics.
Which connects back perhaps to the media reforms too, wanting a more informed young generation.
It all seems interconnected. The political reforms, the economic model with OSTEC, the youth engagement. It paints a picture of a broader vision for change.
So we've covered the 6 specific reforms and these wider initiatives. It brings us back to those big questions posed by 2230.
Right. Will any of this actually lead to tangible change? Is this petition going to spark a real national conversation, maybe even actual reform down the line?
And it prompts questions for you listening, like how important is it for the Elections Department to be truly independent? Could that really boost public trust?
Or is the GRC system still the best way to ensure representation? Or is it time for a system focused purely on single-member constituencies and that direct accountability link?
What about the media? Should there be more space for independent voices? Would that genuinely lead to a better informed electorate? And campaign periods is 9 days enough? Or would 21 days really allow for deeper democratic engagement?
These aren't easy questions with simple answers.
No, definitely not. But Thinking about these proposed changes, understanding what is being suggested and why, that's really the first step, isn't it? It's the starting point for engaging with these really important discussions about the future direction of Singapore's democracy.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the mechanics and thinking about whether they could or should work differently.